Well, hi again, and we're back with Sensory Arts and Sciences, exploring the world, adventure, and this is the third section of that, and it's to do again with self-mental imagery. And here in the fifth and last part of the self-mental imagery series, it's all about our assay, gathering results of our experiences. And here's a rather lovely experience, isn't it, of sunrise at the Sydney Opera House. I'm John, and I'm continuing on with this series. And remember, it's about self-mental imagery overall, capturing ideas, imagery, visionary pictures in our minds of the places we go to. And here we're now finishing with part 5, which is to do with the final assay that we made. And we're putting together here some hopefully very helpful tips on how to bring all our perceptions together into our overall views and adding up and summation. And again, I'm using pictures and examples from around the world that I've taken. Now, we've been working with mental cast up and echo skills, haven't we? And we're now starting to bring together all the experiences we've had. And there's one feature that we've emphasized really throughout this series, isn't it? Is to instruct ourselves and our sensing equipment about what we wish and intend to do before we do it. And this is to line things up so that they will help us to do the assay and summary that we want. And indeed, when we give our senses and instructions this kind of idea, then they will actually try and help us, as we'll discover. Now, we've talked before in the series of various kinds of adding up and summations, haven't we, with ideas towards that. So what we're doing here is we're not repeating that, but what we're doing is giving some overall ideas, some overview ideas to help with the whole process. And one very, very useful one is to start with what you can call the homing pigeon approach. And that's to start with a bigger picture from a greater distance and look for the perhaps easier or indeed perhaps more obvious aspects and begin to add those up, where we can often more readily and easily make a successful start. A broad history, for example, a broad idea, a broad sense of the district. For example, here at St. Catherine's, it's a monastery, that's true, but its surroundings are so important. And here we see the fact it's in the Sinai Desert, surrounded by the most extraordinary rocks and mountains, Mount Sinai itself, a place where world history had such an important effect on people's minds and the people of the district and much wider area. And it was in that location that they built this monastery. So already we can start to get a sense of why it was built here and what it was intended to do. So then, you see, as we make these connections, we can start working closer and closer to the overall more detailed target, just as you might say that a homing pigeon picks up the sense and then uses it to head home. Now, we've also talked about the idea of letting a place tell us about it. And in part 1 in the waiting technology, we used that for the place to lead us physically around, to suggest to us places to go to let our feet tell us where we wanted to go. And now we're going to use the same kind of technology to take us on a journey of the assay of putting pieces and ideas together and let the place suggest ideas to us and follow those ideas. So we're going to again aim to become influenced by the aspects of the place that come to mind and allow them to influence our assay and our ideas and plans. Now, another very valuable and important aspect is to try and allow this process of translation to to have its own way, because once the process of the assay gets going, it's really a good idea just to let it keep going, and because this translation process will then start to generate its own continuous process. Now, we all know, don't we, that when we're trying to do something, it all seems to go much better and much easier when we kind of hit a groove and then keep going in the same way. And this is indeed exactly what happens with our mind as ideas come together, and then we more easily continue as we keep going. It's almost like writing a story. Sometimes the most difficult thing, isn't it, is to get going. But once we get going, off we go, and it then leads us forward and leads us on. And this is exactly the way with the process of translation. Sometimes it's difficult to find that place to start, and we should be open to any place to start, really. But once we've got started, just let the ideas click in and follow each other, and it's surprising how that can, like the story that we might write, we'll discover the story of the place itself. Now, as a final summary slide, if you like, to the whole of these 3 series, these 15 presentations so far, I'd like to finish with a rather lovely idea of bringing a life to our life, a final thought. Because as we explore, one of the key things we're doing, isn't it, is to help to liberate our senses and our abilities, our human sensing, feeling and registration abilities, by giving them all kinds of opportunities to expand their skills, to expand what they can do. We've talked about intuition and visionary pictures and connecting to places and sensing the people that were there and who they were and what they did and what happened. All sorts of things that are indeed probably the kind of skills that are not normally used or developed. They're not really taught in schools, are they, you might say, or even universities. So we're bringing another kind of life to our life. We're providing our life with all kinds of new life possibilities to be added to our current life. And then, as importantly, setting them free to explore all these fascinating areas of the world that we live in. Because it is indeed a most extraordinary place, isn't it? Different world cultures, different world religions, for example, as in this Ahmed Pasha mosque in Tripoli, different ways of living, different histories, all kinds of different things. And we can indeed bring all kinds of lives to our life, which might have a particular way and style to it because of where we were born and the time we were born into. But we nevertheless, through these kinds of processes, I hope we will be able to expand that in all kinds of ways, across the world and back into history, and who knows, perhaps into the future as well. So I hope you very much enjoyed this, as I've enjoyed doing it with you. So okay, well, it's now goodbye to this series. I'm sure there'll be more to come, but this series in a sense is a connected group of 15 presentations to work with as you wish. And a final picture here of this rather extraordinary heraldry and skyline at Hampton Court, one of the world's more famous places, isn't it, connected to one of the world's more famous people, Henry VIII. So with that thought, I'll say cheerio, hope to speak to you again, hope you've enjoyed this. I've very much enjoyed doing it. It's what I do myself, all over the place, all over the world, as I'm sure you can see, and I love doing it, and I hope that you will too. Okay, I'll say goodbye now and speak to you again soon.